So this is an incredibly well-made Mad Max fan film done by the YouTube channel Brightstone Pictures, and I thought that this was amazing for a fan film. I thought the cast did a fantastic job, especially Daniel Graves, who plays this movie's version of Max. He plays the stoic hero incredibly well. The costume design for every character is amazingly detailed and clearly took a lot of time to create. The vehicles look so perfectly Mad Max. The Mad Max series has such a specific aesthetic across all of its films that this fan film absolutely nailed. The action scenes are fast-paced and super fun, the story is super engaging, and the emotional moment at the end of the film, without spoiling it of course, hit way harder than I expected it to. I have yet to see any of the other videos on their channel about the making of this film, from the sound design to the visual effects, but I definitely need to watch them after enjoying this fan film as much as I did. This is a great fan film for people who love the Mad Max series, so if this sounds interesting to you, I'll put a link in the description for anyone who wants to check it out. So this is a horror slasher movie with the interesting premise of it being entirely from the perspective of the killer instead of the victims. And I thought that this movie was alright. I liked the story that this movie has. Sure, it's a pretty generic slasher story, but it still was really fun to follow because I'm kind of a sucker for the slasher genre. The kills were easily the best part of the movie. There's one kill involving someone doing yoga that was visceral as hell, and I definitely do respect the ambition of this movie. It's commendable for someone to try and take the slasher movie genre to new heights by filming it this way, but unfortunately, because you're following the killer, there are a lot of long walking scenes that may be shot really well, but are pretty sleepy as a whole. There was one scene at the very end of the movie that felt like it was going on for hours when it was really only like a 10-minute scene. A very cool way to make a horror movie, but I don't think it worked as well as I personally wanted it to. So this is an animated movie released on Netflix that is essentially a reboot of the Ultraman character for a new audience, and I enjoyed this quite a bit. The animation is super dynamic, using a combo of stylized 3D animation with accents and certain elements being animated in 2D gives it a very unique look instead of just looking like another Spider-Verse clone. I very much enjoyed the voice acting, even though for some reason I thought the main voice actor was Jake Gyllenhaal, even though it definitely wasn't, which I thought was kind of funny. I thought the story was pretty unique for a character like this, especially given this character's legacy. The score was pretty good, and while there are a lot of generic storytelling tropes and moments in this story, the story overall and the characters and the overall messaging was still a very good time despite that. So if you remember back in July when I was in my reviewing Bad Sharks movie phase, this was actually one that released in June of 2024 that I just somehow missed, and I checked it out because of course I still love bad cinema, and this might be one of the worst movies I have seen in all of 2024. I have seen people call these types of movies scam-type movies, where the poster and title is way cooler than the actual movie, and this might actually be the best example of that. This movie has a runtime of about 70 minutes, and most of that is weird synth music with random shots that will absolutely refuse to cut of a wooded trail in what looks like LA for what feels like an absolute eternity. The audio is terrible, the music is louder than the dialogue at most points, the music just does not fit the vibe of this movie, and when the bad CGI sharks start killing people, I kind of start to feel something, but those scenes are about 2 minutes long in the entire movie. If you cut all the forest shot bullshit, this movie literally would only be about 8 minutes long. I may have liked movies like Sharkula on a so bad it's good level, but this movie is just bad. So I am a huge fan of the Corridor Digital channel. I specifically love watching their VFX Artist React series, and on a recent episode they talked about a movie called The Spizer from 2003. And I couldn't tell you how happy I was when I learned that the director, Philip J. Cook, had a new movie that came out in 2024, so I put that movie on the catch-up list and we're talking about it now. And I did kind of unironically enjoy this. I thought there was a lot of creativity in the story, some fun-looking miniatures, a fun plot with some good humor. I did like a lot of these characters as well. And sure, I could get up on my high horse and say that the CGI looks terrible, the acting isn't great, and the script is really weird at points. But was I entertained watching this? Absolutely. So this is a documentary on Netflix following a Russian couple who met during what is called roof-topping, and all their highs and lows in their complicated relationship as they lead up to climbing the Merdeka 118 building. And I really enjoyed this. The cinematography and the way this was filmed I thought was easily the best part. They actually take the footage from the two lovers and their climbs, so you are right in there with them when they are jumping and climbing buildings hundreds of feet in the air. I think I might have actually developed acrophobia watching this, and it is absolutely insane that there are tons of people out there who do this. And I did really enjoy following this couple's highs and lows, how they met, and their daring stunts, but at some point it changes from them doing it for a hobby to them doing it to make NFTs, and I really felt disconnected from them. Still a very thrilling documentary, though. So this is the directorial debut of Zoe Kravitz, and I really liked this. The visuals and directorial style of this movie felt very bold, the focus on certain colors, the cinematography that gave me very heavy Kubrick vibes, and I say that as an absolutely huge compliment, the way the camera moves, and of course the uncomfortable subject matter. I liked all the performances. Channing Tatum plays this character with the perfect balance between charming and secretly terrifying. This is the first time I have seen Naomi Ackie in a significant role, and I really liked her, and I'm excited to see her in Mickey 17 later this year. And I liked seeing Adria Arjona in something after her being amazing in Hitman. Now, I will give a content warning for this movie due to the fact that the subject matter and the twists deal with incredibly strong and touchy subject matter, but I think Zoe handles it very well. And I do think this movie can have some weird pacing issues and some clunky moments. This was still a really fun mystery to unravel with terrifying real-world parallels. Can't believe this movie came out a few weeks before P. Diddy's whole thing. So I checked out this movie because of Kevin Bacon's really funny Instagram post talking about how much he loved it, and that intrigued me a lot, and I'm glad I checked this out. This is a thriller that is told in a non-linear format with multiple different parts, and without spoiling it, this movie does an absolutely fantastic job at playing with your expectations. I love the look of the film. It is strangely very colorful. It was shot in Oregon, which is pretty cool, and usually I would criticize a movie for being told out of order because that makes me feel more distant to the characters that they want me to care about, but I think this movie is the exception to that rule. If you want to check this out, I would implore you to go in completely blind. That's how I watched it, and I really enjoyed it. So this is a new A24 black comedy drama film starring Sebastian Stan, and I thought that this movie was fascinating. It's no wonder that if the Academy was going to stupidly only nominate this movie for one thing, it was going to be the makeup and hairstyling. The makeup on Sebastian Stan looks absolutely amazing, and I'm glad this movie is getting recognized for something, even if it is just for one award. I liked its strange and sometimes chaotic jazzy score. It strangely fit this movie's exceptionally weird and bizarre tone. Sebastian Stan really surprised me with his performance in this. I thought he was fantastic, and I'm glad he's doing interesting roles outside of the MCU. And Adam Pearson is just so damn charming, and I want to see him in more movies in the future. The cinematography looks great, even though it can look like a standard A24 movie. I loved the use of colors, and I really liked the themings around identity. And I really appreciate that this movie never feels like they are making fun of people with disabilities. So this is an anime film based on the manga of the same name, and I really enjoyed this. This movie has a perfect runtime of only being about an hour long. Nothing feels rushed or too slow. The pacing was pretty much perfect, and even with that really short runtime, I felt like I lived an entire life with these two lovable main characters. I loved the story. It felt so human and real. The animation is gorgeous, and I love the different styles of it when we see their different manga strips acted out. And I was bracing myself the whole movie because a coworker of mine mentioned that the ending was super sad, and I had theories as to why that was, but this movie takes such a dark turn that I absolutely did not expect, and the fact that it is loosely based on a real tragedy is even more heartbreaking. But even with that sad ending, there is a glimmer of hope in the end, which solidified this as a great movie. So this is the newest movie from the director of PG Psycho Goreman, one of the first movies I reviewed that didn't come out in the year I talked about it, and I thought that this was a really fun time. I really liked its simple but strangely heartwarming story. Connor Sweeney as our main character was really fun. He plays this character with the right amount of likability to where this kind of character could be super annoying in the hands of the wrong actor. But easily my favorite part of this movie are the practical effects. From the awesome looking puppets for the Freako crew, the miniatures and the look of Freako World, the gooey practical effects and the crazy turns this movie takes made me fall in love with this movie. And I can't wait for Steven Kostanski's next movie whenever that comes out. The second Bad Shark scam type movie on this list, and this is actually directed by the same guy who directed Sharkula, Mark Polonia, and as much as I wanted to love this movie, I found this one to be pretty disappointing given the kind of cool premise. It features pretty much the exact same actors as Sharkula. They spam the same shark sound effect over and over and over again, but I think Sharkula was still a better bad movie because of the absolutely terrible frame rate, and it was the first movie I saw that fits this type of bad movie. The concept is fun, the amount of stock footage is annoying, the sets for some reason look fun and cheap, and even though I was disappointed in this movie, I will watch any movie that Mark Polonia releases from now on, since there are apparently 3 coming out in just this year. So this is the second movie in Full Moon Features' new noir series of films, and much like I said for Mummy Shark, as much as I loved the first noir movie they made called Quadrant, the second one I thought was pretty disappointing. This movie follows these podcasters in a church that the director Charles Band just bought, and these characters are just so annoying that I just did not care at all what happened to them. The premise is interesting and fun, but I felt like it wasn't utilized enough, and there are some really hilarious looking effects, one specifically involving a pair of eyes that looked hilariously bad, and unlike Quadrant, the effects don't even have the AI crutch to lean on. I know that there are a lot more noir films planned after this, and I hope they can improve after this one. So this is a French adventure comedy film that you can watch on Netflix and is actually based on a real French card game called The Werewolves of Miller's Hollow. And the more I have sat with this movie, the more I have grown to dislike it. The premise feels very much like Jumanji, but it is not nearly as fun as those movies and doesn't have that 90s jank charm that the original Jumanji movie has. There are some weird choices throughout the movie that felt really strange and unnecessary, but most importantly for me, the characters in this movie are just so damn unlikable. They always argue and they just don't even seem like they like each other, except for if one of them ends up in jail or is about to be hanged, and the practical suits for the werewolves look absolutely hilariously bad. All I wanted for this movie was to be an over-the-top fun family movie, but what I got was a confusing mess with possibly the most unlikable characters from 2024. So this is the newest movie from animator and director Adam Elliott, and this apparently took 15 years to create, and I thought that this movie was absolutely fantastic. The stop-motion animation is so amazing looking, there is so much care put into every single frame of this movie, and even when there is some stuttery looking animation, when stop-motion animation looks like that, it feels way more human than when it looks super smooth. I loved all the characters and hated some other characters. They avoid some easy tropes with certain characters that I absolutely love that they did. There are some great life lessons and themes this movie tackles that I just can't stop thinking about. I loved the theming around the snails. There are some amazing quotes that come from that. And this movie does a great job at avoiding being too depressing because there's always a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. This is easily one of my favorite movies of the year, and I highly recommend it if you missed the chance to see it. So this is a horror film released on Hulu for their bite-sized Halloween series that is based on the director's short film of the same name, and I thought that this was pretty okay. The story is pretty fun. It feels like a creepypasta movie or a better version of the FNAF movie. The cast is pretty good. The best performance is easily from Elvis Nolasco, who plays Mr. Crockett. He is clearly having so much fun in this role. My favorite part of the movie is the set design and the practical puppet effects. They nailed the look of an old school 80s kid show, and it looks awesome when it's supposed to be all torn down. This movie does have some questionable morals, but this is a pretty fun movie for the spooky season. If I may repeat the same joke I made in my Letterboxd review, those kids definitely saw the TV glow. So this is the supposed final movie directed by Clint Eastwood, and I loved this movie. I loved this movie's premise so much. The trailer does a great job at getting you hooked on what might happen. The performances are all great. Nicholas Hoult just continues to be one of my favorite actors working today, and both Toni Collette and J.K. Simmons do a great job as well. I love how the story just starts. There's like no subplots in this movie, it's just this, and I strangely really like that. And yeah, sure, the movie looks kind of bland, but at 94 years old, Clint Eastwood is just directing his ass off, and it really sucks that Warner Brothers didn't release this fully, because they really don't make movies like these anymore. So this is the newest movie from director Edward Berger, who previously directed the 2022 remake of All Quiet on the Western Front, and I heard this movie was described as being Knives Out but with popes, and I thought this movie was just kind of okay. The performances are all good. Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, and John Lithgow are of course always good in pretty much everything they're in, especially Ralph Fiennes. The cinematography is amazing. Every shot in this looks like it took days to set up to look absolutely perfect. And like Jonathan Fuji said in his review for this movie, the blocking is pretty much perfect, and if you watch this movie, it will really make you appreciate the process of blocking a scene well. But unfortunately, I wanted more thrills and suspense from this movie. When scenes happened when they were interrogating each other were awesome, but I wanted more of those. And I heard that the ending was really controversial. I thought it was interesting, but I definitely could see people getting mad over it. So this is a fan-made Spider-Man short film you can watch right here on YouTube, done by the YouTuber and filmmaker Locust Garden. I reviewed his Fiona short film from 2022. And I thought that this was really cool. The cast does a great job of portraying these famous characters. The pacing feels really good for a 9-minute short film. The low-budget look to everything, specifically for the camera work, worked really well for the horror vibe and tone this is going for. I loved the practical effects and how disgusting they made this version of Peter's spider transformation look. And I think much like his Fiona short I talked about, this short is just really fun to see an alternate universe version of Spider-Man, where the serum gives way to devastating and terrifying consequences. If you want to check this short out, much like the Mad Max fan film, I'll put a link in the description for you to check it out for yourself. And finally, this is the newest documentary on Disney+, this time focusing on Elton John in the biggest period of his life releasing music and the hardships that come with that. And I enjoyed this. I loved learning more about Elton John and what he does nowadays and what he was recording back in the day. The documentary made me really want to listen to his album from 1970, and it was really eye-opening and sad to hear about his struggles with drug abuse and him still being in the closet for as long as he was. This was a great documentary that helped me love Elton John even more, and now I need to watch his final Dodger Stadium performance.